Okay, good morning everybody. My name is Tiffany Mitchell and I'm here to talk about the Stolen Generation. So let's begin. So first I'd like to acknowledge the traditional Noongar and Aboriginal people of the land that now share their land with us, and the acknowledgement that they gave to us and the knowledge at Curtin University. So what the Stolen Generation is the Aboriginals and the Torres Strait Islander people were taken away from their families. They were removed by the government and the churches to be brought up into institutions. They were fostered out by the white people and the families. They were also removed from the 1869 to 1969, and the references here. The Aboriginal children removal took place from the early days of the British colonisation when they first came here. So they broke the important culture and the spiritual family ties, and it left a lasting and intergenerational impact of the lives and the well-beings of everybody. The government policies concerning the Aboriginal people implemented under the different rules, and which means there were different rules and regulations for all different states and for territories of Australia. So that meant that the lives of every other Indigenous people were controlled by the government. So not all states and territories were the same. So some were married out, some had to work, some did get wages, some housing, with the healthcare as well, but were controlled by the government. Records about the Stolen Generations were kept by the government, sometimes the churches as well. So over time, however, the records did get destroyed by the natural disasters, floods and fires, or they were lost by the poor management, which made it difficult for the families and for the friends to track down their children and their loved ones. The quote here, I asked my granny if she thought she was rescued. She replied, I didn't need rescuing for my mother's love. So this was after her grandmother was taken away from her family. So both of this could mean that she was taken away from her biological mother and the land mother, so Mother Nature, Earth. So the denial of the Stolen Generation is the topic that I'm talking about. The Stolen Generation myth has made us to believe that the Aboriginal children were bashed, raped and killed in their own cultures. So that would make the spiritual and the physical areas of the children more broken when they live still with their families. It also hurt more children than we would prove stolen for being Aboriginal. So basically the British thought that children were being more hurt in their own culture, in their own spiritual area, than, say, rescuing them to be brought up into their culture. In 2008, there was the parliamentary apology by Prime Minister Kevin Rudd that was endorsed by Peter Red. So Peter Red said that the welfare officers removing children solely because they were Aboriginal just meant that they only took them because they looked Aboriginal, because they thought that the lighter skin-coloured Aboriginal children thought it would be more safer and better if they were to live with them. So Red written that the governments remove children as young as possible, so that if they are young as possible, they don't really remember their spiritual and their cultural identity that much, so that they will forget about what they learn, and to replace them into institutions isolated from Aboriginal culture. That first advanced the concept of the Stolen Generation, how everybody thought that because that we were stealing the children, it was believed to be the Stolen Generations. However, it could also be that it was safe to say that it was only to protect the children, to keep them safe from their culture. So 50,000 Aboriginal children were forcibly removed by the 20th century. So you can imagine how many children were taken away from their families and how much cultural identity and spiritual identity was stolen during the 20th century. So the significant numbers of Australians did disagree with the apology that was delivered by Kevin Rudd in February 2008 about the stolen generations. There were many arguments, but there were four main arguments. First one is the stolen generations didn't exist. The Aboriginal children were rescued. The government said that we did not do it, and the apology from Kevin Rudd led to compensation claims. So the first topic was the stolen generations didn't exist. A lot of Australian people didn't believe that the children were stolen. They denied it. They wanted to see proof and to claim that they can find the children that were stolen and to show proof that they were stolen. But no one was able to find the proper proof and identification that the children were stolen. So the journalist Andrew Bolt claimed that the stolen generations were giant intellectual fraud that were also unforgivable consequences. So, as I said before, no one has yet produced a single child who was stolen, claiming that the Australians that said they did not believe that the children were stolen had a higher interest that they were just saved, and just because they were Aboriginal, that's why they were taken, just also not because they needed the help. So the Aboriginal children were rescued. So the supporters, which is the British colonisation supporters, claimed that the Aboriginal children were not stolen but were rescued from their families and communities. They were rescued from the rape, from the drug, from the alcohol consumption and the unsanitary living conditions, but they wouldn't really know what was going on because they would just assume that the culture and the spiritual culture there was different from theirs, which made them think, it's not good, so we'll take him. That was also given the opportunity for them to say that the children were given a chance for a second life. We did not do it. People refuse to apologize to the stolen generations. So the people is the British colonizations that took him. They felt that their ancestors should have no part in the conditions and to share no responsibility for the pain that was caused during the 20th century, so that they can only keep the pain for themselves and not to damage their name even further. So also the other argument was the apology led to compensation claims. So many Australian people feared that after the apology, a flood of Aboriginal families would be claiming compensation after what happened to them and to their children. The British government did not want to waste millions of dollars for the Aboriginal children and for their families, for they didn't want to spend the millions, and that would be they didn't want to spend the money because why would they save the children and then give them money to compensate them for protecting their children? So they didn't want to spend any more money for them. So during the time of Kevin Rudd's national apology about the stolen generation, the first steps were written in giant letters at the front of the Parliament lawn. So what this would mean to the Aboriginal children, to the Aboriginal culture, and to the British culture is that because that they did a bad thing in the past, that we shouldn't forget about it, but we should remember it. So what the first steps would follow up or sum up to be is one step forward to continuing what has happened during the past, and they can learn to overcome it. So the federal court could not find the stolen generations, however, in the Northern Territory, despite hearing a huge test case and a subsequent appeal to help look for the children of the to help the families look for their stolen children. So the Labor also promised handouts around $75,000 to anybody who can find the children and to bring them back to their families. So where are the stolen children now? Robin Main long argued for an apology for the stolen generation, which was given by Kevin Rudd in 2008. The latest piece seems to suggest the stolen generation was not the stolen generation but the rescue of the children. The metaphor for that stolen generation words mean dispossession, which dispossession means to get rid of whoever owns the possession and to dispossession it to somebody else so that they can look after it better. So during Kevin Rudd's finest hour, it was believed that the apology was the best hour he delivered for the world during the time of 2008 of the stolen children. So thank you for listening. The references are here. I hope you learned a little bit more about the stolen generation and the denial of the stolen generation. So thank you.